Welcome to a new year, a new season of Get Gardening. I'm just finishing potting up these pansies that I bought here. I'm really glad that I was able to find them. It's been a few years since I've bought pansies, but they bring me such joy at this time of the year. They're an annual that's hardy. Even if we get some snow or some frost, they won't mind it. They'll be able to continue performing right the way through June. On today's episode, I'll be discussing updates to the channel, cutting back my hellebores, trimming back my roses, and checking on the plants that made it over winter. So join me today and Get Gardening. While these look good now, I know they're going to look even better in a few weeks' time, so I know I'll be enjoying these as the weeks go on. I wanted to talk to you about some of the changes that I'm making to my channel. First of all, I really want to try and be more consistent this year and put a video out every Friday if I'm able to, and just share with you the things that I'm doing in my garden. I feel like I was struggling to figure out what to film every time I was ready to put a video out there in the years past, so this year I decided I'm just going to shoot what I'm doing in the garden, whatever it may be, and share with you the joys that I'm having and the things that I'm growing all throughout the years. Another change that I really would like to implement is adding more tech from you guys. So, for example, I really would be interested to see if any of you took pictures of your garden over the winter. So for me, I love looking at the garden in winter, and I was wondering if any of you would be willing to share pictures of your garden from the winter with us so I could put on the channel and everyone could view it. So next week I'd like to try and add pictures from your garden. In the link below, you'll see that I added a Facebook page where you could put any pictures that you took of your garden over the winter this year. So a perennial that I am trying to purchase more of for this year is the Hellebore. You can see I have this one here, and throughout the winter it remains evergreen. The leaves do not fall off, and in December, before the first snowfalls come, it really looks beautiful. It's a dark green color, and I love having it in the garden. A good thing that's recommended to do is to remove all the old foliage, because a lot of times they can start getting infected with disease. You can see here there's some black spots on it. So all I do is I trace one of these old leaves back as deep as I can and cut it off. Put it in a bucket. This year I have already purchased several new hellebores. I really want to up my early spring game this year, and Hellebore is a great perennial that comes back every year and adds beautiful color at the beginning of spring when I want color so bad. So I have quite a few coming. I've got different colors: yellows, whites, purples, even one that's going to be black. Most are double forms. Guess I'll go ahead and finish this job and show you what it looks like when it's all done. Alright, there we are. You can see it's cleaned up. You don't have to take away every single leaf, but I try to get some. You can see it's just loaded with buds in there. In the front along here I've got crocus, and in the back you can see right over there's one little snowdrop. So I'm looking forward to seeing this hellebore bloom in the next couple of weeks, hopefully. So come back and you'll see this beautiful hellebore blooming. Something I did differently this year compared to every year I've been gardening was the way I treated my roses over winter. So every year since I have been gardening, I have cut my roses pretty much down to the ground to cover them with rose combs. And I still believe that that is the most foolproof way to keep your roses alive over winter. However, it also cuts your plant back down really low, and so it kind of stunts it and keeps it growing relatively small compared to everything else. And last year I did some experimenting and I kept a few roses not covered, and our winters have been getting more mild over the years, so I did notice that all those roses that I did not cover survived. They performed better. the following year, and they were larger. This is one of them. This is my Lady of Shalott climbing rose, and it grew to be 9 feet tall last season, and that's because I didn't cut it down to the ground. But that means it needs work now in the spring that I typically would have done in the fall. Cleaning roses in the autumn always was a task that I really enjoyed, as long as I was wearing gloves to keep the thorns from getting me. You get a chance to really look at the plant when the foliage isn't there. You get in there, you can clean out anything that's dead or diseased, and you also want to get rid of little tiny twiggy bits. You want to make as much light and air come to your rose as possible. That really helps with disease prevention. So this year I left all of my roses completely uncovered, and even though I was really worried, we had a few weeks in February that were really horribly cold. We had enough snowfall that it kept them covered. And even this Lady of the Shalott that was too high for the snow covering, it looks completely green and fine. So I'm going to go in there and clean it up. I also try to cut the plant back just slightly. So if you can see this stalk here, it's split into many different branches that are typically a little bit weaker. It's best to take us back to a new bud. So if I turn you down there and we look in, you can see that right about here there's a new bud coming. So if I cut just a bit above that bud, this bud is going to be where my new plant grows from. So that's where I'm going to take this one back to, right about here. And then I'm going to just go through the plant and clean it up. Anywhere that there might be two branches crossing where one might run into another one, I always take out the weaker one. So these two might hit each other. I'm going to take this one out completely. Alright, and here is what it looks like after I've cleaned it up. You can see I've thinned it out. It's cut back a little bit. It's opened up. And I'll quickly show you the climbing rose. Here is the climbing rose. You can see I thinned it out as well. Took out all the little twiggy bits and cut it back some. So now these plants can just wait a few weeks till they burst into growth. One of my favorite things to do this time of the year is to check and see what survived over the winter. I'm so happy to see these Russell lupins made it. I did lose several of them. Sadly, there's not many left. This one has a red tinged leaf. This anthemis came from my old garden. I gave a piece to a friend, and last year she returned some of it to me, so I'm so happy that it actually survived the winter because I wasn't certain about it. The Japanese Andromeda is one of the earliest blooming shrubs in my garden. In fact, these flower buds were formed last autumn. I'm so happy they made it. I was really worried about these Japanese maples. This one is called Bihu. It has beautiful yellow twig stems. I read reports that they weren't completely hardy, so seeing that the color is still on that one and my red Japanese maple makes me so happy. I look forward to seeing these burst into growth. Well, that's about all for me today. I'm going to finish planting up some of these pansies along the walkway garden. I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Remember, if you have some pictures of your garden from the winter, go ahead and put them on my Facebook page. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next week.